Hey everyone. So, a while ago, I think it was a month ago at this point, somebody asked me on Twitter, how do I remote view? And how would you learn how to do it? And, well, there's a couple different ways you can do it, and I brought visual aids to help with this. Because basically, when you're remote viewing, let's see, I'm going to make a little illustration here. There's two ways of doing it. I'll just draw it out so you have a better idea. One is where your mind just makes sort of like a little portal to the location, so you just see everything that's there. You just see buildings or trees or blah 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 or some roads or something. But the other way that you can do it is if you generate an energy body. And if you generate an energy body, you can interact with the city and the buildings and the roads and the trees. So it basically looks something like this, if that makes sense. There's two different ways of doing it. You can just see something or sort of fly around and touch something. And remote viewing generally refers to the first method, and astral projecting sometimes refers to the second method. So we'll put numbers with it, just like that. So where would you get started with this kind of thing? Now, that's a good question. Let's see. Well, for me, the way that I got started is that I had read some literature in the past about, like, not serious literature, just a bit, about, like, people who worked in the government that would remote view and stuff, and how they would do it, and they would just, like, look at a string of numbers and have all these images pop into their heads, or just a phrase or a name of the place, and they would see the location. So when I first started trying out, like, remote viewing, I would just take, like, a single piece of information and hold it in my mind. And this is why meditation becomes important, is because, like, when you hold a single piece of information in your mind tends to want to go through it very quickly, because, like, we just have a nature to process information quickly because we're used to, like, watching our surroundings and paying attention. Like, everyone has degrees of this. But with meditation, you can control more your stream of consciousness and what your mind focuses on. You learn to do that better. So, having a little bit of meditation under your belt, you can focus on one thing, sort of constructively. And that's where the psychic ability comes in. You're not always going to get the right impression, or even an impression that makes sense. There's plenty of times people have asked me to look at something or to try to get an impression of something, and, like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Like, there's been times where, like, this can't be real, and I go back to the first piece of information someone gave me, like a phrase, and I start from there again. I end up in the same place. I'm like, okay, either this impression isn't working, or whatever I'm looking at, whoever asked me didn't realize this is what it is. And so you just empty your mind, sort of, and you focus on this piece of information. Like, if it's a picture of a place, and, if you're going for straight remote viewing, you would just sort of get a view of the place, and you can sort of move your view around and start to see more of the surroundings as your impression gets clearer and clearer. Now, I prefer to astral travel when I'm looking at stuff, because for me it helps when I can sort of interact with whatever I'm trying to look at. Like, one instance is that one time I was trying to remote view just a random place on the moon. I was just like, I just want to go to the moon and see what's there. So I went there, and so I found myself on the surface of the moon, and I was like, okay, it's really pale, nothing is going on. And I was like, no, I really want to feel the surface of the moon. Like, I want to feel what the moon rocks feel like. So I imagined my astral body sort of landing on the moon, and, like, I started to feel the texture, and I felt like super fine sand, like, not at the beach, not something you would find that does, like, super fine, so smooth and soft that it cakes your fingernails and the little ridges in your finger, just the most smooth moon rock you'd ever felt. And I'm like, damn, space dust is real smooth. And it's like those textile details that really help you get a better impression of the place. Because once I got that textile detail, I was like, you know what? This isn't something that I would have imagined. I'm at the moon. And, so I went deeper into the moon, found this random base. I wandered around for a bit, as I tend to do, honestly. But when it comes to remote viewing, and you want to get better at it, it really just takes practice. You can remote view a place that you like, and see how it is at different times of the day. Like, you could remote view like a coffee shop that you like your favorite coffee shop. Like, don't even try to look up like if it's open right now, or like where the sun is pointing at it. Just like try to imagine, how does it look right now? Like, is it open? Are people there? Is it full? Like, is it dark in there? Is it closed? Like, it's things like this that'll help you start to get better, because we can all guess what a place looks like or what its condition is, but honing this ability is about letting the details come to you instead of your mind trying to give you those details. And that might sound counterintuitive, but that's pretty much how it works for me. And, not even I get things right 100% of the time. Like, I'd say there's plenty of times where I was like, maybe I was wrong, or maybe, like, that was just my impression and that doesn't relate to what we were trying to figure out. But, trust yourself. Because, like, I went years knowing that remote viewing existed and that astral traveling was a thing, but I never really tried, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to be this master remote viewer or anything. Like, I can't even bend a spoon. Why the hell would I be good at remote viewing or something? And it's like, you need to give yourself credit, okay? Like, just because society doesn't want to admit that, like, ESP is awesome and anyone can do it, doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Like, there's so many things in society that could do so much better for everyone just by getting some credit. Like don't let it bring you down like that. And if you want to learn how to astral project, well, here's the thing. Right around the time where I first started trying to remote view, I was basically trying to remote view like spaceships or different kinds of alien beings to communicate with them, because I was like, you know what, I know if I put my mind to it, I can talk to aliens and just know it. And what would happen is that I would remote view these aliens, and most of the time they were telepathic, so great, we can totally communicate. And they would be like, we'd be like communicating back and forth a little bit, and they'd be like, your telepathy isn't that good. And I'd be like, I only have human words to work with, okay? I'm not going to understand every concept you're trying to convey. And they would be like, I know one thing that will help. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And they'll reach through the portal I'm using to communicate with them, grab my physical body, and start pulling me. And then I remember the first time it happened, I was like freaking out. I was like, what are you doing to me? And they're like, just relax. And like, it didn't work the first time because it was like too freaked out. But then another time when I was communicating with different beings, they're like, you know what? I know how to fix this. And then they reached over and pulled an astral body out of my physical body through the portal and just sort of plopped me in their spaceship. And my physical body was like still here. Like, I could still see things around me and move my arms, but I was also there at the same time. And I remember the first time it actually worked, I was like, what? And they were like, now you can see me better. Now you can hear me better. I'm like, why am I here? I understood their goodwill, but at the same time, I was like, can I even get back to my body? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But, that's basically how I learned to astral project the way that I do right now. Just aliens would pull me out of my body. And it really did make things better. There's concepts sometimes that if you're communicating with, like, a race that doesn't use English, that uses telepathy, like, there's just some concepts you're not going to understand. Because, like, even if you have the words to explain it, the ETs don't know which combination of words will actually convey the right meaning to you. And so, if they're using like a specific phrase in their language that has no even approximate translation for yours, you might just not hear that word, because when you're telepathically talking to someone, it sounds like they're speaking English. But when you're telepathically talking to them, it sounds like you're speaking very simply in their language. So, when a term crops up that neither of you has any like sort of basis for, like, it just usually won't translate. I mean, there's variations and, little differences that happen, but that's generally what happens. And when that's happened to me and ETs I'm communicating with, they try to like point to concepts that I have, because they'll ask me, they'll be like, can I look through your memories real quick? And I'll be like, okay. And from there, they try to look for concepts that are at least slightly similar, and they're like, you see this concept, now imagine you extrapolate it to this point here, and then imagine that you take that point and you take it in a specific direction. This is what I'm talking about. Like, there was one time where that happened. I was talking to this like race that I heard existed that had like triangle shaped heads, and I was like, if they're real, I'm gonna find them. So I found some, and it was like they were like on a research station on some asteroid way out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, for them it wasn't nowhere, but it was just super far away. And I asked them, I was like, what do you guys eat? And they were like, we eat. And then I didn't hear anything. I was like, you guys eat food, right? They're like, yeah, we eat a highly nutritious thing. And I was like, I don't understand what that is. And they were like, you know how you like put yeast in bread? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, and you let that yeast grow in the bread? And I was like, yeah. And then you bake that bread and it's food? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, we eat that yeast when it's eating the bread. And I was like, what? This doesn't make sense. And they're like, no. We have a kind of yeast that eats some foods that we eat, and we just eat that yeast while it's eating things. And I was like, that doesn't sound tasty. And they were like, don't worry, it's nutritious, it's fine, we're not complaining. And I was like, okay, whatever. And yeah, you know, if you want to use like remote viewing to just wander around and see things, okay. But if you're gonna use remote viewing for like talking to beings, like that's you're going to encounter like these little pitfalls here and there, because that's just life, I guess. Interdimensional life. And then, you know, if you go to like higher dimensional space or higher frequency space and you encounter like a higher being, you're gonna see even more of that difficulty. I remember I was trying to tell someone like how higher beings think, and I literally couldn't explain it. I was just like, they just have so many ideas at the same time, and then when they use a sentence, there's like 20 ideas instead of one in there. And they were like, I just don't understand. And I mean, when you're talking to telepathic beings, you'll probably have images flashing in your head, even if you hear them speaking in English, because those visual cues, they just help a lot, you know. And I'm sure that when you're talking to them, they'll probably see images of what you're talking about, even if you're not trying to show them that, just because you talking about it brings those images to mind. So telepathy is pretty easy to pull off once you're in your astral form, or once you're remote viewing anything. Because when you're like remote viewing, oh yeah, let me like redo the drawing. When you're like remote viewing an area, you're basically projecting your consciousness onto that said area. See, like, I'm gonna draw a person, and you'll see what I mean here. I'm just drawing a person and a brainwave. See it? Okay. And I'll draw a building and then a person, just like that. Okay. So when you're remote viewing, you're projecting your consciousness into a specific area. So when your consciousness reaches this point, there's a signature of your consciousness. There's a signature of your consciousness within the area suddenly, and within that time. So like if the connection cuts off and you're back to doing normal everyday stuff, that frequency of your mind will disappear from the area. And similarly, you know, if you're like astral traveling over to that area, there's the signature of your astral body within the area. That's why whenever I trespass into an alien base, the aliens usually get spooked even if they can't see spirits, because they can sense spirits. But you know, then you go back to your body and then you do normal everyday stuff, and that frequency is no longer in that place at that time. Now, one thing you will encounter while remote viewing or astral projecting is time fluctuations, because time flows a certain way from your body, and it tends to flow completely differently in your astral body. Well, if you're wandering around, time will feel the same. Like an hour wandering is still an hour just in your body. But like if someone says, can you look like at a building in the past for me? You're gonna feel time is different. It's hard to explain, but that's what it is. Like, there's been times that people ask me about, like, a specific thing, and because I can't really get much information about it in the present, like, I'll be like, well, what happened in the past? And as I go and see what happened in the past, I feel these differences in time. And when I'm astral projecting into the past, or remote viewing, because for me, I just do both, what usually happens is that I start to lose track of where I am in time, which is very disorienting. And you're like, but how can you lose track of time if your body is right here with a watch so you know what time it is? And, like, as far as I can tell, I've never lost a connection to my physical body while I'm astral projecting at the same time. But what does happen, and I'll just smear this so you can see, is that, let me draw a body. So, basically, the reason that you can feel disoriented in another time is because when you're astral projecting or remote viewing, I'm just going to stop drawing different ways because it's difficult. What can happen is differences in how much you're resonating with your own time. Because you can have an astral body but only be resonating with 10% of it, and be resonating like 90% with your physical body. So I'm going to just draw that. So just 90% and 10%. And, you know, if distracting stuff is happening around you, that's probably the best you're going to be able to do. Just, it's backwards. 10%, 90% kind of thing. Okay? But if you're in, like, a quiet room, you know, and you've really got your Zen on, you know, and you're just really, like, traveling, and your body is, like, laying in bed, and you don't even care, you're not hungry or anything, then you're going to be more on your energy body's side than your physical body's side. And when that happens, you start to feel more, like you're aware of more details in your astral body, like, whoa, you can sense so many things, there's so much information. But at the same time, you get disoriented a lot easier. It's not to say you get lost, but it's like the more that you're resonating with your energetic body, the easier it is to get lost to the sea of information because you become aware of it. It's like if you're only resonating with 10% of your energy body, you've got like this tiny little view. But if you're doing like 90%, you've got like 90% of a circle, which is like way more, you know, just a huge freaking thing right there, you know. And you can practice going in between 10% and 90% because they're good for different situations. Like if you're trying to find like a really elusive spirit, you want 90% because spirits are hard to find. If you're just like, I don't know, like if you're like trying to find an alien, any aliens at all, like use 10% because they're everywhere. You really don't need that much. Or spirits are everywhere too. And yeah, like you know, there's like I said, most ETs will pick up the presence of your consciousness whether or not you have a body there. So know that, because if they get mad at you, or if they're like looking around being like, I know someone is there, like, don't be an ass and be like, I'm a ghost, you know. Just be like, I came, if you want me to leave, I can go. And you know, if you go into like a military base, and there's like a weird shield that you can't pass through, or like, I don't know, if there's like another human astral projecting there that's like, this is a restricted area, you need to leave, like, you can just go. You know, I did say some warnings, like, stay away from negative beings, like, definitely do that. In the astral, you can sense better than your physical body, so when you meet a negative being, you'll just know it. And, you know, on the flip side, when you see, like, a super positive being in the distance, you will totally know that. Like, if you ever try astral projecting to the sun, like, it is really hot there, although your astral body doesn't care, because astral bodies don't care about temperature or anything. Like, you feel this, like, super intense positive energy, and you realize that, like, the sun is actually this incredible being of positivity. Like, it's definitely a physical object too, but it's like possessed by positive energy. It's amazing. So, yeah. Astral projecting, it's good to practice it with other people if you can. Like, what helped me, like, show other people that I can, like, remote view was, the encouragement was, like, a positive, welcoming attitude. Like, hey, you can try remote viewing me, and I'll tell you if you get details right, and then I'll remote view you and see if I get details right. And, like, don't invade people's privacy. because, like, well, I mean, if you're just wandering around, you didn't mean it, that's fine. But everyone's got to use the toilet sometimes, and you should respect that, especially when people are, like, changing stuff. Although, like, if you're a psychic, you get weird impressions at weird times, so just try your best not to be a jerk. Let's see, other than that, I guess that might be everything. Oh, another cool thing about astral bodies is that you can change them. So let me just erase the board once again. So let me redraw the person. Okay. So let's say you're just minding your business and you're like, I want to go to the edge of the atmosphere, because that's totally me. And you're just like, yeah, and you just make this astral body that's just like flying up towards the atmosphere, being like, I'm just having a great time, just doing whatever I want. And you're like, what if I got ginormous? You can do that. You can, like, imagine your astral body getting freaking huge, and it'll get freaking huge. It's awesome. In fact, there's been some times where, like, I astral project myself to a location where there's, like, like ETs or whatever, and I worry that, like, the size I'm telling people they are isn't quite right, because, like, what I think the size of my astral body is like bigger or smaller than I physically am. So you can do that. You can get, like, bigger or, like, super small. I do that sometimes to hide from aliens when I'm astral projecting, and just be like, I'm in the floor. And you can also, like, just become things that aren't even, like, a humanoid form. You can become a ball of light. Many higher dimensional beings prefer to be like this really chill ball of light, like, interdimensional disco ball. I mean, you can choose to take on, like, an animal form if you really want to. You can be like a bird. Like, really, I'm not even kidding here. Like, you can literally do that. Literally, like, bird time, and you can also, when you're in astral, I think I mentioned it in my last video, you can walk up to things like a tree. I'll draw a little tree here, just beep, 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 circle, just a tree. You can walk up to a tree with your astral body, touch the tree, and then resonate with the tree and become the tree. Like, your astral body can resonate with anything. So if you relax yourself and just take in all the information that the tree has, you can feel all the sensations of the tree and become the tree in that moment. It's a really nice feeling, because trees process time at a different, well, not just at a different speed, but they just see time differently than humans. It's very peaceful, very relaxing. And, like, if you try, like, you can do with living more living creatures, like bees or animals or whatever. Like, this skill has honestly helped me a lot. Like, when I'm in a dream state and I just don't understand someone near me, like, if I know I'm, like, astral projecting, I'll just touch them and, like, see their mental state, and it helps me so much, because I just take in the information, of their being, and suddenly I can see why maybe they're being a jerk in the situation that we're in, or why suddenly they're, like, super tense or afraid or irrational. Like, it helps me a lot in understanding people. And that's just stuff you can do with astral travel. Depending on the way that you generate your astral body and the way that you learn to interact with frequencies, you can interact with physical things in a noticeable way. Like, someone told me recently that when I went to check out, like, their porch light, it turned on even though no one was there. But that takes some practice, at least from what I've seen. Maybe, you could try it on the first try and get it on the first try, but for me, practice. Let's see. Am I missing any beats? I tend to avoid people when I'm in the astral, but that's just because, like, when I go into the astral, it's usually because I want to be alone, because I just want to, like, take in some aspect that's relaxing or distracting, that kind of thing. But you can definitely try to do social things in the astral. Like, I've spoken to ETs plenty of times. Humans, like a handful. I usually just speak to other humans who are either in their astral body or dreaming or already dead, something like that. Yeah, like, I spoke to a ghost, I think, like, 3 weeks ago. Someone asked me, they were like, can you check if this person has a ghost? And I was like, yes, she does. And she was really confused that I popped out of nowhere and asked her, but she's okay. So, yeah, there's those kinds of things. And yeah, you can totally talk to ghosts like this. Like I said, some ghosts are negative entities, so keep that in mind. But that doesn't mean that being dead automatically makes you a jerk. So, most people who are freshly dead are going to be kind of nice. They're just going to be, like, confused and disoriented. And, yeah, that's basically it. I'd say that, like, astral traveling, like, it really sort of, like, opens your mind to the ideas that sort of come along with reincarnation. Because with reincarnation, you basically get told that you can become anything, and there's this intrinsic cycle that connects everything in the universe to everything else. And when you're like astral traveling, you really see that. You see how every piece of information that everything has in a strange pattern reflects everything of its surroundings, and how its surroundings are a product of an even bigger sort of ecosystem or system, whatever. So yeah, it's when you really get into it, it can be like a really defining experience, a really profound experience. Like the first couple times that I really started to astral travel and like interact with things, I was like, oh my god, like this is exactly what it feels like not to have a body. Like I remember my immortal soul, and that feels great. Like really, when you're astral traveling, like the state that you're in is a pretty close approximation to how you would be without a physical body at all. Because when you're if you don't have a physical body at all, you can resonate perfectly with anything. Because when we have physical bodies, we have egos, and we have like a resting frequency, which it's hard to resonate outside of. That's why for me personally, it can be hard to resonate with like some super negative beings, because like I try to keep it positive up in here. And like, since I'm always resonating with my body because my soul is inhabiting it, like it's not going to resonate with anything else perfectly, because I'm always keeping at least 10% on this guy right here. But when you don't need to do that, damn, like people talk about like tripping out and like experiencing these crazy experiences or being these strange creatures. Like when you can like completely synchronize with something else, you see the beauty of the universe. You see why experiences are so profound. You see why people reincarnate. You see why, like, life itself is intrinsically valuable and precious. Not just because, like, living creatures are beautiful and we should protect them, but also because being alive itself is this powerful experience. You don't have to be a butterfly or a human being or a dog or a tree to appreciate that. You can be anything that's alive and appreciate that. So yeah. And yeah, that's about it. So I'll probably make another video for more tips, because I feel like maybe I didn't touch on all the tips, but I can't remember them right now. I probably need to make a list or something. But yeah, so this is my astral projecting video or / remote viewing. I hope you enjoy. Have a good one.